in terms of the structure of today and this breakout group, we've got approximately an hour, as Forbes has identified, and we've got 4 speakers lined up, and they're each going to succinctly convey a bit about themselves and their topic of interest today, their specialism, in about 4 minutes. And then we're going to go on to some questions, discussions. The nice thing is that we've got a good sized group here to have some great discussions and questions and debates around where we see this taking force. So without further ado, unless there's anything else, Forbes, that you wanted to say.
No, you've said it all. I'll just get the slides and we get going.
Brilliant. And just for reference, I pressed record, so I think we're all good to go.
You are good to go. Thanks, Sam.
Fabulous. So this is the lineup for today. We've got Isaac, who's going to start the session. So welcome to you, Isaac. Followed by Nick Dawson from Voices of Hope. We've got Virginia Grouse, and finally Robert O'Dowd. The first 3 sessions will have a presentation to run through, and I think Robert, as ever, is freestyling. So we will look forward to that as well. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Isaac to kick off today's session. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I'm just going to request control, if possible, Forbes. Otherwise, I get confused as to where the slides are going. So yeah, thanks guys. So my name's Isaac and I'm a sustainability advisor at Considerate Group. I'm just going to be talking to you about, I suppose, our experiences for the hospitality sector. I've put these slides together. They're probably a bit long, so I'll skip through them, but they're there if anyone wants them afterwards. So just a bit about us. Considerate Group's a specialist sustainability consultancy, for the hospitality sector. And our sort of aims fit in quite nicely with this webinar in that our kind of business model is to try and create savings for our clients while reducing their impact, the environmental impact of their operations. So here's just a few of the clients that we're working with, and we're actually really lucky in that, given that COVID's going on and everything, we've actually sort of still grown and we're currently recruiting. So that's just indicative of how sustainability is sort of growing and the business opportunities that there are there. As kind of some of the other speakers mentioned. So I'm just going to go through, these can be broken down in quite a number of ways, but I'm just going to try and go through 4 sort of categories that we've kind of broken them down into. And as I said, there's a few others that can fit in and they kind of intermingle with each other before going on to a couple of the kind of opportunities that come from them. So kind of the biggest one, and the reason why I think we're mostly here today, is reducing a contribution towards climate change. And I'm going to come at this from the tourism sector's point of view, given my background. But tourism is responsible for 8% of global carbon emissions. And so going net zero would cut this out massively, but it's also responsible for a few other things. And we just need to keep in mind that while carbon emissions are key, we need to be aware of what some actions may have in terms of negative repercussions. And to kind of address this as a sector, I suppose, and as a tourism business, we need to take collective action to reduce emissions so that we can protect, I know someone mentioned kind of coral reefs. We need to protect the natural environments that make tourism and hospitality possible. Another trend's around regulations and risks. So climate change has brought around kind of stringent regulations, things like climate change levy and carbon tax hikes, and they're only going to get tighter as we move forward. And so just staying on top of these and being aware of them and almost taking proactive steps is something that businesses can capitalize on and get a competitive advantage for those that aren't following the same sort of path. Financial incentives. So there are loads of opportunities to boost profit margins, mostly through utility savings and efficiencies. So while also saving the climate, cutting and energy kind of energy costs and energy consumption can save up to around 20% on costs there. And kind of people have mentioned as well, retrofitting and additional investment into services like HVAC, solar, lighting can also all improve kind of bottom lines in the long term. And the final key trend just comes from the growing scrutiny or changing scrutiny of customers. who are increasingly seeking products that are more sustainable and want to buy and spend their money in a way that kind of benefits people and benefits the environment. And to do this, to really drive change in a business, we also need to have staff being engaged. So that it's really important to engage employees, as they're the people on the ground, typically for us in hospitality businesses, who really drive the change at a kind of base level. So just quickly, what are the things I can capitalize on? Well, there's loads of new services and products for businesses to help them react to these trends. And due to the growing nature of this, there's more competition, and so products are just getting better. So I'm definitely biased, but I'm just going to give an example from Consider It Group very quickly, which is our app called Flutter for the hospitality sector. So we've worked with BEIS, the Government Department of Business, Energy and Industry Strategy, to develop a energy efficiency app for hospitality sector, which helps address the 4 kind of broad categories I've mentioned. So can join like-minded businesses towards addressing carbon reactions, save money, take proactive steps to address regulatory risks, and then also this is a kind of staff engagement piece as well. We're pilot testing that at the moment, so if any of you guys are interested in kind of getting in touch and finding out more about that, it's all free until September, and we'd love to sort of speak to like-minded businesses and anyone who can feedback and we can have conversations with, basically. I don't know what my time's gone, but I've tried to go as quick as possible, and then there's just my kind of contact details if anyone wants to discuss anything more generally on sustainability or whatever. And I'm happy to kind of, as I said, have these slides shared.
Isaac, thank you very much, and perfect timing. So yes, you were on the money there, so thank you. So now we're just going to skip to Nick Dawson from Voices of Hope to talk us through the Good Food Group Co-op, the work that they've been doing. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about yourself and then introduce that, if that's possible.
Yeah, sure, no problem. As I think those of you who are expecting Sarah Clay here, I apologise for her last minute change, but it's great to be with you, and Sarah is certainly with us in spirit. So my name's Nick Dawson, and I work for Voices of Hope, and I'm very pleased to be representing the charity sector and our initiative today. Just very briefly about myself, I actually very recently joined the charity sector. I worked ironically in hospitality and restaurants for 20 odd years, most recently with the Leon chain here in the UK, and before that with some fast food giants from around the world. So I've very much made a transition of my own now to the charity sector. I started volunteering with Voices of Hope, and it's turned into a full-time role or a part-time role. I'm very much enjoying getting stuck in with the team there. And today, I think it's great to be able to talk about the Good Food Co-op, because I think it's a really great hands-on example of what can happen when the local council, a local business, and the charity sector get together to make things happen and benefit the community they're part of. So that's hopefully what I'm going to talk you through. So if you can move on to the next slide, please, folks. So this really is what the Good Food Co-op is all about. We wanted to make healthy food accessible to everybody, and our concept is quite simple. It's a fruit and veg box concept. We have a range of 3 veg, 3 root, 3 mixed boxes, and we work ostensibly across the Kingston and Richmond boroughs to deliver those to people. But I think our USP is very much in the way the business model has been set up. We're essentially a not-for-profit. So every full price box that is purchased by a customer will help a local family or individual get that same box at a very subsidized amount. And those families who receive them will be referred from local organizations. Some examples there: Grow Baby, Food Bank, and Refugee Action. So that's very much the essence of what we do. If you'd like to move on to the next one. And these are our values, and we think these values are very much rooted in what the green economy represents, I guess. And the first one, as we've seen, is that it's inclusive and accessible to all. So we want everybody to be able to eat spray-free, good quality vegetables and eat healthily. And I think by the community, for the community is one of the kind of principles we're very proud of, because this is very much about the community taking action to help others in their community. So it's the circular nature of the transaction, if you like, that everybody can get involved through the customers who buy the boxes, volunteers who work to pack and deliver those boxes, and then obviously the referral customers who would benefit from them. And we're doing our bit in terms of the kind of the planetary aspect of this, in terms of championing local producers. I mean, the local within this part of the UK, obviously sustainable, seasonal. So we're having shorter supply chains and spray free. So there's no pesticides, no chemicals going on produce. I think in terms of reducing waste and surplus within the wider system, we play a role within that in terms of our part as being part of a good food group, which is a local coalition of charities, community groups, where we're working very hard to make sure that any surplus food in the borough gets redistributed very effectively. And reducing carbon footprint, clearly, we deliver our boxes, but what we try to do is to encourage people to pick them up from hubs. And I think that's one of the topics we might explore in terms of what are the small things we can do to work on that. And I think encouraging healthy communities it goes without saying, is at the heart of what we do, because healthy communities are thriving communities. Next one, please. And this I won't really dwell on this. This is just a morning in the life of the Good Food Co-op, how it all happened. I think the thing to say here is that we've got what I think is a simple and efficient operation to actually make this happen, and just draw everybody's attention to the fact that this is a volunteer-powered organisation, that we're using that, as I say, the community hubs. That's one of the locations where customers come to pick up their produce boxes, and that works very well, because when people come to pick up, they have contact with somebody, they hear about what's going on, and you get this very great virtuous circle of the word spreading about what we're doing, and people wanting to get involved either as a customer or as a volunteer participating in the process. And the fresh produce you see at the end there is really what we're encouraging people to do. And we don't just give them the produce, we like to give them ideas and recipes of what they can do with it, so that they are maximizing what they can do with that to lead healthier lives. Just on the next slide, a few stats. We started in November, and as I say, it was great. It was an initiative very much supported by the council with a little bit of seed funding. We mobilised the sector, and so since then we've sent out nearly 2,500 boxes. You can see that's generated a modest profit, and the great news for us was when we generate profit, it means that somebody else is going to benefit from it, because it goes to subsidised boxes, and we've sent out so far 834 referral boxes to families who can enjoy them that may not have been able to do it normally. And last slide, I think, and this is really just why do we think this is a good model? Well, it's the way we've set this up is to very much be a part of people's transition, to move people out of poverty, food poverty, rather than a system that reinforces dependency on things like the food bank, which are doing a great job, but we know that the objective of most food banks is to close down because they want people to move on. And so far we're finding that we can sustain this financial model, working with volunteers, working efficiently at the same time as addressing that need. And in doing that, we will use assets within the community, whether that's a building, whether that's people, whether that's groups, to generate as much profit, which will then go back into the community. And so people gain that sense of community from doing that. And I think, in terms of the people who will benefit from what we do, we're ensuring that when they come to us for their box, they're also coming with some advocacy to help them move forward in their situation. And I think creating people who are more resilient, thriving, is a good way to go about building healthier communities. And at the same time, we're giving them the choice about what they do. There's a small payment, and they're choosing to spend the money the way they do, which is giving them that dignity, which is sometimes missing. So that's, in a nutshell, what we do. Love to explore it further with the rest of you, and that's where you can reach either the charity and look at the other projects we get involved with, or take a look at our website for the Good Food Co-op, and have a look at whether that might be something you'd be interested in becoming a customer of or a partner of. Thank you very much.
Nick, thank you for that. And that has raised a number of ideas and opportunities in my mind already. So very exciting to hear that. Virginia, now over to you to talk us through fashion retail circularity, if you would. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you. First slide. I'm Virginia Gross. I'm principal lecturer in fashion business management at the University of Westminster. That's all I'm going to say about myself. It's not about me. My agenda is quite simple. We've got a big problem in the fashion industry, but there's a lot of best practice in circularity, and there's a lot of action being taken, and we need to take more. So next slide, please. The first slide really is, don't worry, I haven't got all that text on all my slides. This is really the only slide with a lot of text, and it's got some stats that are quite horrifying. And just to underline that information, the fashion industry is facing an existential crisis. That's my view. We need a system change. 140 million pounds worth of clothing in the UK in 2019, so pre-pandemic, went to landfill. 140 million pounds. So we need to try and close the loop. We have some great practice in the industry, as I said, and there are some good intentions, but second hand is not the answer. If we move on to the next slide, please. We're over consuming as a nation and globally. And at the moment, we're sending so much of our rubbish clothing overseas. We've got it washing up on beaches in parts of Africa, parts of India, along with, it's like plastic waste. It's another problem. So second-hand needs to be handled differently, and we need to look at some of the best practice. The first one I've got here for you is a fantastic part of Zero Waste Scotland. It's a revival and repair service for cashmere, any cashmere you can have repaired and revived. There's a lot of interest in this area at the moment in the industry. Knitwears is my background, and that's why I'm quite interested in working with this company, the Cashmere Circle. So they're doing some great work. Next slide, please. Really good examples of rental and resale in retail. If we look at Nordstrom in the United States, a bit like John Lewis, they have had a tie-in with a company called Rent the Runway for several years, and you can drop off and pick up in their stores rather than buy. Recently, Moss Brothers, who we know as a loungewear, formal wear rental company, they just launched something called Moss Box, which is looking at much more casual wear, shirts, etc. The same kind of process, so rental. So we don't need to buy everything. Rental's an option in retail, and collaboration is really important there. Next slide, please. New fibres. This is about the industry really getting behind investment in textile innovation. And there is a mushroom fibre, Milo, has been patented. Stella McCartney is the first brand to use it. Yes, it's a luxury brand that usually trickles down eventually. There is Pinatex, which is pineapple fibre. There's also an orange fibre. There's a lot of work going on globally in creating brand new fibres, and they're being created out of waste, pineapple skin, orange skin, and mushroom waste. So that's another fantastic option, innovation in textiles. Next slide, please. The denim industry is worth mentioning because they've been quite leading quietly. Denim does consume a lot of water. That was my timer. The denim industry have some great practice of recycling denim into new textiles. Next slide, please. I think is my last slide. current campaign in Selfridge is working towards their 2025 strategy, targets for brands and suppliers stocked in stores to meet minimum sustainability standards. And I think that's really it. I think my next slide is all my references. No, it's about change. So we've got to get behind more of the things I've talked about, take action and move forward and implement circularity in business where we can. My next slide is the references. That's the end. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Virginia. And yes, again, some questions are springing to mind here already from my perspective. But without further ado, over to Robert to talk us through the role of the arts in the green economy. Thank you, Robert.
Sam, thank you. And as Virginia said, it won't be about me, but I'm the Chief Executive of the Rose. And other than being bullied by the head of climate at WWF, the Rose has changed its energy supplier. We are plastic free and we're trying to reduce our carbon footprint. And looking at it through the business opportunity or the growth opportunities, by changing our energy suppliers, you know, we actually are paying less. And as renewable energy grows, we will pay less and less. So there's an immediate economic benefit to us as a business. So to me, I will try and mix growth and where culture and the arts can redefine the playing field, because I think that's an important role that we play. Culture has always been responding strongly to environmental issues, nature issues, etc., and culture sector through Julie's Bicycle, who is an Arts Council funded across the sector organisation, have come up with sort of 6 broad principles or trends that we within the culture sector can and should follow. The first, obviously, is the work. We have the ability to create work, whether it be music, plays, film, documentary, etc., that can explore the issues that are facing us today and raising awareness and focus. And to me, that also brings up a business opportunity, because the arts is predominantly consumed by 45, 50 plus. But it's the under 45s who are really the pioneers and are changing the way we perceive climate change. I think that we as a generation, 45, 50 plus, we've missed the boat. And of course, we're damaging the next level of generation. So I'm aware that if we put on more art that includes younger people, then that's good, because that's where their interest lies, but also it's good for us economically. And that could be from plays like Lungs that had Claire Foy and Matt Smith, actually through to a film my daughter helped make, which was A Life on Our Planet, the David Attenborough film. So those are both coming out of the creative and culture sector. We are also very good at activism. I won't talk about a footballer at this point, but obviously Marcus Rashford has changed the government's approach to school meals and maybe should be working with Nick. But artists and creatives can champion, and they obviously have huge followings, and they can be unique to connect their audiences and fans to the issues that we're talking about. They can build momentum, they can amplify matters, they can speak to power, and as we've seen, they can actually lobby government and get them to change or raise their standards. Interesting enough, and I do have an inside track, WWF have a number of ambassadors, and a lot of those come out of the arts and cultural sector. I think the other thing that we can do as a sector is have cultural organizational leadership. We can be trailblazing, we can express what we're doing and communicate that, because again, you know, if you look at theatre, a huge number of people go to the theatre every year, so there is an opportunity to see best practice in the theatres that people go to. Another part of the cultural is the creative industries, and design and innovation is hugely important in how we tackle and change the impact of climate change, and also opening up the business opportunities and the growth opportunities. Designers, as I'm sure you're all aware, are currently the turbochargers of the circular economy and how you make that economy work more effectively, from the likes of Apple to IDEO, who are the largest design agencies in the world. They are slightly greenwashing. We always have to be careful of greenwashing, but they are beginning to wake up to the fact and actually beginning to design solutions to the problems that we're encountering. The last two things I wanted to talk about is collaboration, and I think someone else, Virginia or Nick, spoke about collaboration. Creatives are very good at collaborating, and we can generate and create collaboration. So we can scale action, we can accelerate learning, and we can demonstrate very clearly the benefits of changing the way we behave, both as individuals, but also the economy and to the SME market that we're talking about. And I suppose the final summary of all of that is that we can use culture, both individuals, the organizations, and the work we create, to be pathfinding. I mean, it's a clear message that if we don't start changing and change now, then it's too, I mean, if you talk to Isabella properly, she'd almost say it's too late on certain levels. But we have the opportunity, we probably have 5 years where we need to make a significant change, but a change that doesn't actually damage economic growth, but it has to be a circular economy, not an economy driven by a capitalist pure view of growth, growth, growth over everything else. So to me, that's really important, and culture can help spread that message and change perception, as well as I've identified clear economic benefits for the rows. And I'm 5 minutes 30, so way over, so I shall finish.
Robert, wonderful, fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you to all our speakers so far today. Really insightful and, you know, raising a lot of points possibly for us to discuss further. So we've got about 30 minutes, Forbes, I think, to follow through with some questioning and some discussions with our speakers today. We're going to start, I think probably Forbes and myself will ask a few questions, and then open it out to the audience who are here to add any questions. I'm just checking the chat, and I think we're all clear at the moment.
All quiet so far. I would, I mean, just doubling up, and I'm trying not to interfere with you, Sam, with this. From an outsider coming in, I find those really interesting, really kind of completely different points of views and different roles and personalities with this. So I think that is really, really interesting. I think there's a lot from what Virginia said, which is quite eye-opening, particularly for somebody who does buy too many clothes. It's very, very interesting to see how that economy works or doesn't work. And certainly from Robert and the culture, and I think that is where activism does really kind of, it's a bit of a hotbed with that. And I think, as Robert said, is that there is a younger generation which is kicking us old farts up the backside, to be honest. And I think that has to continue to be encouraged, and not for our generation to somehow stifle it. I think it's really important to allow that to keep happening. Or else we're going to do everybody a disservice. That's my part to the intro, Sam. Pardon me.
Wonderful, Forbes. Yes, continue to chip in. So, you know, building on what Forbes has said there, I think, you know, there was some common themes across all of those topics that I felt were quite pertinent. One was the interlinking of business growth and sustainability, and how it seems now that you can't achieve one with the other, without the other, sorry. And that seems to be something that's a theme across all of these areas. And then the other thing that I was quite pleased about was to hear that, you know, we are aware of our impact at this point. So, you know, Isaac was talking about the amount of impact that the tourist industry has on the global warming and the impact there. And, you know, therefore we are in a position to understand that and take forward targets to again reduce that. So I'm just looking at the notes coming up, but I was just going to kick off with a couple of questions and then see where we go from there. And first one, Isaac, really, I think from my perspective, I've seen the Flutter app and I've had a look at that, and it's very interesting. And I guess what you're doing there is raising awareness of energy consumption. Does your focus look at retrospectively supporting the hotel sector, or do you get involved prior to the build of many of these developments?
It varies, to be honest. With Flutter, we're very SME focused. So there's almost 6 billion kind of pounds worth of attractive energy saving in SMEs in the UK. And the key challenge with them is that a lot of them just don't know how to unlock it and aren't really aware of it, that maybe consider energy efficiency as something worth doing. When we work with larger clients, we can be involved, in the process kind of earlier on, and we're doing a project where we're working with a kind of asset manager to create essentially building and construction standards with a couple of our partners. So it can be across all range, depending on the sort of clients that we're working with. But yeah, really for SMEs, it's about trying to get them to a level where they're at least aware, and that they at least kind of have some semblance of, this is definitely an issue and something that I can tackle, and just build on that, really.
And I think what I found was quite interesting about, how you're empowering people to actually make a difference, because ultimately, we can have all the tech in the world, but unless people are using it or taking its recommendations, then, we don't unlock that saving, do we?
Yeah, no. So we learned that, so the Flutter stuff is very new, but we've learned through working with kind of hotels in the past that actually where some of the key benefits come from is actually doing workshops with staff and educating staff, and providing them with the resources that they need to implement sustainability plans on the sort of ground. And so we've made Flutter in the way that all staff within a business can have it. So the whole point again is to try and drive cohesive action, and then hopefully as well you get learnings through that. So someone might get a tip on the app telling them some energy saving statistic about lighting or whatever, and they can take that home and do that domestically and spread awareness that way.
Well, that does lead me on to one other question, and that was, it seems like your model would work domestically. Is there any plans to sort of help domestic customers? Because obviously that's a massive challenge for both understanding consumption, but also, the impact that that's having on the carbon footprint. Yeah,
no, there's not plans to do that. I think that sector is largely taken up. There's a lot more money available where charities can latch onto and deliver work kind of at a scale that we maybe as a small consultancy can't do in the domestic market. So it's something we've not looked into. We've tried to just stick to our niche, but there is a lot of support out there coming from the likes of NEF, National Energy Foundation, and similar charities.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Isaac. And Nick, I was going to, firstly, it was a very inspiring presentation, and the Good Food Co-op is a wonderful project, something that I think we as a business should help support and promote as well, because we've seen a big shift in localism through the pandemic. Have you seen that impact the way that you're being utilised as a business?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody's, and obviously in some ways the pandemic has helped that, because people have been home, they've been spending more places closer to their home as opposed to going to work. And I think with the bigger, the broader scale of everybody thinking, localism is one way to go about doing this. So I think certainly when we tell people about the project, we listen to our volunteers who are involved in the project and our current customer base, that's all part of the reason that they're kind of tapping into this. They want to know that, it's that impact thing. They want to feel they're having an impact. And if that impact can be local, then local multiplied many times becomes a bigger thing. And so they feel like they're doing their bit.
No, completely. And I think, congratulations on making it a sustainable model as well. I mean, to do that within the time frame that you've been working on this project is a fantastic achievement. Do you think this is something that you could roll out or create some sort of support model for other locations to do something similar?
That was certainly one of our intentions. And as I should say, we had some, kind of input from the council and some of the people. And that was certainly the intention, that we can prove that this is a workable model. It's not one that needs, subsidizing. It can be self-funding on a scale. So we've only been going for, 5 or 6 months. So there's some way to go. But I think we've seen the path is clear to how you can maintain this and what the ratio of paying customers to supporting customers is. And yes, I think we certainly embrace the whole idea of kind of sharing the know-how. I think it's funny because in some ways you'd love to expand it, but the project actually lives by its localism. So the way to kind of do that is potentially to duplicate it, share the ideas with others, and you know, and kind of share knowledge and best practice.
And is it can you scale it up even more than you have at the moment, or is it something that is quite challenging to continue to grow, or is the ambition not to scale it to?
I mean, I think, you know, the customers will ultimately be but we'd love to create the excitement and enthusiasm around the project, and then yeah, you know, there's enough vegetables out there, so it's just a question of the operating infrastructure, and I think we can scale that. You know, we need more volunteers, we need maybe bigger spaces, or just, I think that's where growth will challenge you to think creatively. And I'm sure a lot of the other panel members have said that the innovation comes through having to look at this. So, you know, we can put in more shifts, use the space more efficiently, which will help our green credentials in some ways as well.
Well, again, it's something we would be very interested in partnering with you as a retail destination, and something that we could support with the promotion of it. My only concern is that we might create too much demand, and therefore, you know, we'd have to work that out. But it's quite exciting, I think.
Thank you very much. And that, yeah, the growth, you know, as you say, we would like to grow it as far as it can go in this area. But yeah, managed growth is always better than up and down.
Yeah, indeed.
For everybody
indeed.
concerned.
And I think the last thing from me that I've noticed from your presentation was how crucial partnership working was for the success of this. I mean, is that something you put as the center of this whole business model for you?
Yes, I think so. I think partnership on many levels. As I say, we had some encouragement and thought partnership from the council in terms of looking at models to explore. Then, you know, partnership, and we're sharing a space with the food bank at the moment, which is, you know, you can't always do that. So sharing locations with other people. And then I think that partnership in the community where we do our best, and the council have helped us to get the word out. But the best way of getting the word out is to build those partnerships with local community groups and customers, who will then spread the word and tell people what we're doing, and hopefully build more customer base.
Brilliant, Nick. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Virginia, I mean, very interesting presentation today. So thank you very much. Something I hadn't understood, the stat of around 2.7% increase of clothing, you know, on an annual basis, which, you know, obviously creates massive challenges. And I know that Robert touched on greenwashing, and we've seen that with a number of retailer brands where they highlight the credentials that they want you to see, but don't necessarily stand by those targets. I mean, do you think this will be a consumer-led change, you know, because consumers will be demanding this from these brands, or do you think it's a partnership with the brands taking the lead?
Personally, I think it's the industry that need to take the lead. I think when you ask consumers about this subject, not many people are going to say they don't care, because they're unreliable witnesses, aren't they, consumers in this field? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, what's that thing, the field of dreams? If we build it, they will come. We've created the problem of overconsumption in the fashion industry. And I think the industry need to work on new fibres, recycled fibres, and building a way out of it. Collaboration's not easy in the fashion industry. It's because it's so competitive. But that is one of the options. But collaborating with textile manufacturing and, you know, brands working with their suppliers, I think is probably the best way forward. But we've really got to do something about the overconsumption. And actually, I was just looking at some WRAP data before this presentation to check. All of the brands that you could possibly think of, the mainstream ones, they've all signed up to the Paris Agreement on climate change to become net zero by 2050.
Yeah.
You know? So they've signed up to that. They're going to have to actually get behind it. At some
Indeed.
point. It is quite encouraging, actually, that I was quite shocked. I won't name names. I'm being recorded, but you know, I was quite surprised at some of the brands that have signed up to the Paris Agreement. So that is a positive for me. But yeah, we've just got to get behind it. I think consumers will come. We gave them fast fashion, and they bought.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? How they essentially, you know, the success of retail and fashion retail has almost created the problem with this fast fashion, you know, proposition that we've put towards consumers, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's not about not buying, it's about buying different, it's about providing something different in the first place. There are lots of new brands, and some of the luxury companies like the Kering Group, they're really leading on recycling textiles. You know, again, for 2025, they've got some very ambitious targets. So I think there's a lot going on. And I think we need to tell customers what we're doing as well as an industry.
Yeah.
To get them, because obviously there are customers out there that care, but then, you know, you see people queuing up after the shops open for certain retailers, which, you know, you just think, why are they so desperate to buy clothes? Anyway, I think if we create a way forward out of this situation, I think the consumers will follow.
No, indeed, Virginia. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? I'm just intrigued because I feel that there's a bit of I was curious with the pineapple mushroom going to recreate the leather look, because a couple of weeks ago Pandora basically said with diamonds that they're trying to create quite artificial diamonds, so they're trying to, in that market, move away with something which is, I don't know the right word, synthetic. But it's that kind of appreciation that actually you don't have to go for leather, that this could actually be a good substitute.
Yes.
And I think it's quite interesting that you've got somebody like Stella McCarthy who's really pushing that forward. Yeah. I think that needs to get momentum, doesn't it?
Yeah, and she's the first, I think she's the first brand to sell vegan leather. Or she was the first brand to sell vegan leather, but that will trickle down in the industry. You know, at the moment that will be very expensive product, but others will be able to take advantage of that. And you know, it is, the trouble is, I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle really easily, and I think we've got to create new things, and we've got to innovate with textiles. I think that's it's a great option to try and get ourselves out of this mess.
Yeah. Thanks, Virginia. Thanks, Forbes. Anything else you'd like to touch on there, Forbes?
No, not necessarily to Virginia. I might come back to Morris a little bit later, because Morris is in the hospitality sector and I'm very familiar with Morris, and I think he would probably like to pick up on something which Isaac mentioned, but that's about it for the time being. I think Morris is on the phone.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I've just got one question for Robert, and then we will answer some of the questions that are in the chat, and also open it out to the audience. So, Robert, I was very interested to hear about what you're doing and your approach. Do you think there's an opportunity within theatre to help educate people as well? Because it feels like, from what you were saying, the older demographic are the ones that need educating more, possibly, and that's your target audience currently.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I spent 10 years working on a government environmental project as well, so I have to try and disassociate my two skills, which is one of the reasons Izzy ended up doing the career she did, because she saw me doing that in the Northeast and in Cornwall. I think a couple of things I would say is it's not about hair shirt anymore. I think the old view, and our wonderfully inspiring Prime Minister talking about bunny hugging, it's just so far off the mark. I mean, there was a global cringe, I think, when he talked about that. So yeah. I think that there is, and I think the word education, the sparing Virginia her blushes, is a very dangerous word outside of FE and HE, because it sounds like you're being preached to. So the work I did for 10 years with the UK government, both in the Northeast and in Cornwall, was actually about behaviour change, because the concept of hair shirts doesn't work. The concept of it's such a problem, and there's been more press about that, which is good. that it's such a big problem. What can myself as an individual do to have any impact? And it was just interesting listening to Isaac, because in 2007, which feels like a million years ago, we were doing home metering, home smart messaging. We were designing solutions around a low carbon house in a very challenging housing estate in North Newcastle. My cri de coeur is that we're still talking about it 15, 16 years later. I think the government are now having to implement these. If you're getting, I mean, one of the things about COVID bailouts, and there's been 1.7 billion put into the arts, and we've actually had to sign up to changing the way we behave to be able to access that money. And I think part of the work that is really important is to say, if you're going to have bailouts post-COVID, COVID is appalling, but let's not waste a good crisis. Therefore, you have to change your behavior. I think that the arts, not just theatre, but all the arts, have an extraordinary opportunity to communicate what we're talking about here. So yes, I think if you call that education, yes, I think that's very important. And we can talk about changing behavior. I mean, I said the play Lungs, which had Matt Smith and Claire Foy, so 2 Hollywood superstars, they streamed it because of COVID. So I think it's been watched by 500,000 to 1 million people. And the premise of that play is, should we or shouldn't we have a baby? Because of the God, I sound like Harry and Meghan now. But the whole point of the play was to say, well, we want children, but should we have children? And it was a bit sort of white middle class anxiety, which I think we always have to be very careful of, because the arts is consumed by white middle class people who get anxious because they think they should be anxious. And actually, to get that younger generation telling their stories, I think, is hugely important. So we're working on a number of projects where young people will bring new work to the theatre, talking about how they see it through their perspective, not the white middle class perception in nice to watch theatre. So yes, education, I wouldn't use that word, but to change attitude.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Robert. I won't write down education. I've crossed it out now. So, Forbes, would you like to ask a few questions? I've seen there's some in the chat.
Yes. I'll just quickly ask Morris if Morris is available. Is Morris there? Morris is not available. What a shame. Okay, there was a few questions in the chat. So I'll start with Danielle. The first one was to Nick, was how many volunteers does the project use? Have you been affected by volunteers returning to work?
Good question for any volunteering organisation. The project currently uses across the team that help us pack the boxes, and then some of our drivers, probably 10 to 12 volunteers, and that can obviously grow. And we haven't yet, I'm pleased to say. And part of that is working with volunteers and trying to get them, they're engaged in the project. So any of those that have the opportunity to make it fit with a return to work are trying to do that. But I suspect it will happen as we emerge further from lockdown, and we'll have to be working with other people to think creatively about how we engage people into the project on a sustainable basis.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'm going to try Morris one more time. Morris. He's actually my ex-brother-in-law. Morris, come in, Morris from Ireland.
Hi guys, I got sorry for ignoring you.
No, it's okay, Morris. The reason why I wanted to get you in is to pick up really on from Isaac and some elements from Virginia. You work in the hospitality sector, and you've been doing this for a number of years in terms of trying to change the hospitality sector to get them more environmentally friendly, recycling towels and things like that. In a brief snapshot, how is it going at the moment, and what's working and what isn't working?
Well, I suppose okay. So primarily, my marketplace is in Ireland, but I'm always open for expansion overseas. In hospitality, I suppose it's the real key focus now is carbon, single-use plastics, local purchasing, and minimization of food waste. And they're the primary drivers for customers there, but they're also the primary drivers in terms of cost savings for any hospitality business, be it a restaurant, bar, cafe, hotel, any accommodation provider there. So, and they're all relevant, and and they're all they focus, and the focus, particularly a big focus, is on carbon. Everybody is pushing hard on carbon and measure and starting to talk about what is your carbon footprint. Corporate buyers for accommodation, particularly for meetings and accommodation, are all asking for the carbon footprint of an overnight stay, for a meeting, etc. And because they're asking that question, it means in time they are going to differentiate their purchasing decisions based on the carbon footprints of their supply chain. So in hospitality, we're just part of a supply chain. So everybody has to do their bit. So that's the big focus. There's huge savings to be made. I mean, I've been at this now for 20 years, my fourth career, and no hospitality business has ever cost more to implement environmental improvements than they have saved. And in some cases, vastly greater savings are available there when you just start focusing and looking at it.
Thank you, Maurice. Isaac, you were nodding your head a little bit at a few points which Maurice was making.
Yeah, so with regard to the sort of business carbon footprinting, I think that's becoming more and more kind of pertinent in terms of making hospitality businesses resort to that. And then just to touch upon what Nick was saying in terms of, or sorry, what Robert was saying in terms of not education, as he called it. But the key there is to, again, the corporations are going to be doing this first, but the key there is to try and work out how to get that message across to the leisure customers. And how do you we need to try and sell them the vision of the sustainable future and get them to buy into it, for them to kind of be wanting the same as the corporate clients in terms of the carbon footprinting, the really, really low sort of impact stays and ecotourism. So yeah, just basically agreed with almost basically everything Maurice said in terms of the savings and the way things are going.
But Isaac, I'd come around a slightly different way, is that because I'm at this so long, I have my iterations, I have had a number of iterations in terms of education, communication, etc. And I'm now firmly in the camp that it is not up to us to, and I use that term in brackets, educate the customer. You know, if I'm spending as a customer my money in your business, my carbon footprint is your problem. I'm giving you money to enjoy, relax, stay, and you know, you could argue the same for any business, retailer or whatever. Once I'm a customer walking in the door, it's your footprint, not my footprint. And I think if businesses really take that approach and really look hard, is we don't want to sort of be in this, and certainly in hospitality, educating. You know, I'm going away. You in the UK now. You're opening up today, tomorrow. We're not opening up hotels for another month, and we all want to go away. And I can tell you, we don't want to be educated. We just want to have a good time. It's the competitive advantage opportunity for first movers, who will that messaging is, you know, it's got to be on the website. It's got to be up front. You know, we've got over here in Ireland, we've got 2 carbon neutral hotels, and they can both identify hundreds of thousands of euro worth of business because they use that in their marketing, in their communication.